This book was written in 1978. 1978. And in it, Stephen King describes in extraordinary detail what happens when a deadly virus escapes a government laboratory, spreads across the world, kills most humanity, and leaves the survivors to rebuild civilization from scratch. The social breakdown, the panic buying, the government cover up, the misinformation, the way ordinary people respond to extraordinary crises. I read this book after living through COVID, and I want to tell you there were moments where I had to put the book down and just sit with what I had just read. Because Stephen King in 1978 described what we lived through in 2020 better than most people who actually lived through it. This is my review of The Stand, and I will tell you right now this is one of the greatest books I have ever read. For those who don't know, The Stand is Stephen King's epic post apocalyptic novel. A weaponized super flu called Captain Trips escapes a US government facility and wipes out approximately 99.4% of humanity. The survivors, scattered, traumatized, trying to make sense of a world that has collapsed overnight, begin to gravitate towards two poles. On one side, a 108-year-old woman in Nebraska named Mother Abigail, who represents goodness, community, and hope. On the other side, a demonic figure called Randall Flagg, who represents order through fear, power, and darkness. What follows is essentially the oldest story ever told, good versus evil, played out across the ruins of modern America. That's all I'll say about the plot, because the joy of this book is in how the journey unfolds. Let me tell you what genuinely astonished me about this book: the detail. Stephen King doesn't just describe a pandemic, he describes the experience of a pandemic. And he gets it right in ways that feel almost impossible for someone writing in 1978. The way the virus spreads silently before anyone realizes something is wrong. The way the government initially tries to suppress information. The way people don't believe it's serious until it's far too late. The way hospitals become overwhelmed. The way social structures, law, government, economy collapse not dramatically but gradually and then all at once. Reading this after COVID was genuinely unsettling because the specific texture of it, the denial, the panic, the grief, the strange silence of empty streets, King captured all of it. There's a section early in the book where King describes what happens to a small American town as the flu moves through it, family by family, house by house, the mundane horror of it. Reading that section reminded me of the lockdown, and I thought this man wrote this 40 years before it happened. That is not just good writing, that is prophetic writing. For a book this long, and we'll get to the length, the characters are what carry you through. And King is extraordinary at characters. Stu Redman, a quiet, unassuming man from a small Texas town, is your anchor throughout the book. He's not a hero in any traditional sense. He's not the smartest person in the room. He's not the most charismatic. He's just decent, quietly, stubbornly decent. And in a world that has lost almost everything, decency turns out to be the most radical quality a person can have. I won't tell you what happens to Stu, but I will say when I finished his storyline, I sat back and felt something that great fiction rarely makes me feel: genuine relief, real gratitude that this particular character made it through. And then there's Randall Flagg, King's greatest villain. Not because he's the most violent or the most powerful, but because he's seductive. He offers people what they desperately want in a world of chaos: certainty, structure, someone to tell them what to do. And people follow him willingly. Reading Flag in a post COVID world, when we watched how easily frightened people gravitate toward authoritarian certainty, felt uncomfortably real. Now, the honest part. This book is long, very long. The original 1978 version is around 800 pages. The uncut version, which is the one most people read today, is over 1100 pages. And there were moments, especially in the middle section, where I felt it. The book demands patience in a way that few modern novels do. There are entire chapters that feel like detours, storylines that take a long time to connect to the main narrative. I understand why King wrote it this way. The length is the point. You need to feel the weight of this world, the distances between survivors, the slowness of rebuilding, the exhausting work of constructing hope from nothing. If the book were 400 pages shorter, it would be a thriller. At 1100 pages, it is something else, something closer to an experience. But I won't pretend those middle sections don't test your patience. They do. What I'll say is this: The Stand rewards patience more than almost any book I've read. When the payoff comes, you feel it in your bones because King made you earn it. And the climax, I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm going to tell you this. The final 100 pages of The Stand are some of the most dramatic, most earned, most emotionally intense pages I've read in any book, in any genre. King takes everything he has built across 1,000 pages, every character, every relationship, every theme, and brings it to a conclusion that is simultaneously shocking and inevitable. There is a moment near the end involving a character who I had completely given up on, where the story does something that I genuinely did not see coming, and it recontextualized everything that came before it. That is the mark of a truly great novel. Not just a story that surprises you, but a story where the surprises feel, in retrospect, completely earned. Should you read The Stand? Yes, absolutely yes. But let me be specific about who should read it. If you love epic storytelling, character driven, slow burn, deeply human, this is for you. If you lived through COVID and want to understand what you experienced through the lens of extraordinary fiction, this is essential reading. If you have never read Stephen King because you think he's just a horror writer, this book will change your understanding of what he's capable of. The Stand is not really a horror novel. It is a novel about what human beings do when everything is taken away from them. Do they choose hope or fear? Community or power? Love or certainty? These are not horror questions. These are the most important questions there are. I started The Stand expecting a good Stephen King novel. I finished it feeling like I had read something that genuinely mattered, something that explained the world I live in, not just the pandemic, but the deeper patterns of how human beings behave when they're frightened. If there is one book I have read recently that I would put in someone's hand and say, read this, it'll stay with you, it is The Stand. Have you read it? Tell me in the comments. What was the moment that hit you hardest? And if you haven't read it, tell me that too. I want to know if this review convinced you to pick it up. Subscribe if you want more honest book reviews like this one. Every week, I cover a book, a film, or a story that deserves more attention than it gets. See you in the next one.